When you're told your role has been eliminated, most people accept it immediately because it sounds like a business decision, neutral, final, and already decided. But that conclusion only holds if one thing is actually true, that the work itself is no longer required. And that is the part most people never examine, because in many situations, the work does not disappear. It continues. The same tasks are still being done. The same responsibilities remain. The same outputs are expected. The business still relies on that work. The only difference is, someone else is now doing it, or the work has been divided across the team. Once you see that, the original explanation is no longer complete. That's where you stop accepting the label and start testing the decision. Because your role has been eliminated is not just a statement, it's a claim. And like any claim, it only makes sense if it matches what actually happened. So instead of accepting it, you test it. There's one simple way to do that. You ask, did the work actually stop? Not the title, not your position, the work itself. Did those functions end? Or are they still happening, just in a different form, or through different people? Because if the work is still being done, even partially, then the role, in substance, has not disappeared. It has been redistributed, absorbed, reassigned. And once that happens, this is no longer about a role that no longer exists. This is about work that still exists, and a decision about who continues doing it. And once you look at it this way, the explanation starts to break down. Because if the work is still being done, then nothing actually disappeared. The work is still there. It just moved. Which means this is no longer about a role being eliminated. It's about a decision about who continues doing that work and who doesn't. And that's a completely different situation. Because when a role is eliminated, the work is gone. But when the work stays and only the person changes, that's not elimination. That's selection. And once you see that, you can't really go back to the original explanation. Because now the question is unavoidable. Why was I the one selected for termination? And this is where it stops being a label and starts becoming a question. Because once you see this as a decision, you can't leave it there. Decisions don't happen in a vacuum. Such decisions cannot be arbitrary. They are supposed to follow some kind of logic, some consistency, some explanation. That actually makes sense. And when they don't, that's where problems begin. Because if the work still exists, and only one person was removed, then the explanation you were given may not be the real one. It may be a simplified one, or in some cases, a pretext. And that matters because pretext is often where deeper issues hide. So you go back, not to the termination itself, but to what happened before it. And you start asking, very precisely, what changed? Not in the business, in your situation. Did you raise something that was uncomfortable? About workload? About pay? About how things were being handled? Did you say no to something that had quietly become expected? Overtime? Additional work? Unclear responsibilities? Did you ask for something that required the company to adjust? Time? Support? Accommodation? And after that, did anything shift? Not dramatically. Subtly. In how you were spoken to. In what was expected of you, in how decisions started being made around you. Because when a situation moves from structure to selection, those details start to matter, not because they prove something on their own, but because they begin to show that the explanation you were given may not be the full one. And that's the shift, because once you're in that space, the right question is no longer, was my role eliminated? The question becomes, why was I selected? And then, does this decision actually make sense? From an operational standpoint, from a consistency standpoint, and from how other people, in similar situations, were treated. And once you start asking those questions, you're no longer just accepting what you were told. You're actually evaluating it. That is how you stop accepting the label and start testing the decision. So once you understand that this may be a selection decision, the next step is not to react. The next step is to assess it properly. And you can do that using a very simple structure. You look at a few key things. First, the work itself. What part of your work is still continuing? Which responsibilities did not actually disappear? And where did that work go? Was it given to one person, divided across the team, or absorbed quietly into existing roles? Because that tells you whether the explanation aligns with reality. Second, the decision itself. If one person had to be removed, does it actually make sense that it was you? Could your work have been redistributed differently? Could you have taken on work that others are currently doing? And was there any clear, objective reason given for that decision? Because if there isn't, that becomes important. Third, the comparison. Look at people in similar roles. Were others doing comparable work treated differently? Were similar responsibilities left untouched in other parts of the team? Was this change applied consistently, or only in your case? And then there are a few additional things that often make a real difference. Timing. Did anything change shortly before the decision was made? Record. What was actually documented? In emails, in communication, in the explanation you were given? And performance. Were any concerns ever raised with you before this happened? Or does the decision appear without that context? Because when you look at all of this together, the work, the decision, the comparison, the timing, and the record, and the performance history, you start to see whether the explanation holds, or whether it begins to fall apart. And that is the purpose of this step. Not to jump to conclusions, but to understand your position clearly before you decide what to do next. So once you've done that analysis, the next step is not to react. It is to respond carefully. Because at this stage, you are not trying to prove everything. You are trying to clarify what has already been said and what it actually means. So the first step is usually this. You go back to the employer, not to argue, not to accuse, but to ask, very precisely, what exactly does role eliminated mean in my case? How was that decision made? What work was actually eliminated? What work is still continuing? Who is performing those responsibilities now? Because once you've done your analysis, you are no longer asking blindly. You are asking from a position of understanding, and that often changes the nature of the conversation. Sometimes, that conversation leads somewhere. Clarifications are given. Explanations become more detailed. Issues are resolved. But sometimes, they are not. And that is where most people feel stuck, because they assume that if the employer maintains their position, there is nowhere else to go. That assumption is not correct, because there are specific processes designed for exactly these situations. If the issue relates to wages, hours, or termination entitlements, there are employment standards processes that deal with those claims. If the issue relates to discrimination, differential treatment, or retaliation, there are tribunals that assess those issues. And this is the part most people don't realize. These processes are often accessible. You can initiate them yourself. You are not required to build a full legal case on day one. And in many situations, you are not risking large legal costs just by stepping into that process. But the key point is not to rush into any of that. The key point is this: once you understand what actually happened, you now have options. Real ones. And you can choose how to move forward, instead of assuming that the decision is final. So the idea that there's nothing I can do is often not based on reality. It's based on not understanding how the system actually works. And once you understand that, you stop seeing this as a closed situation, and you start seeing it as a process you can step into, not emotionally, not blindly, but with structure. Because when you understand the work, the decision, the comparison, the timing, and the record, you are no longer just reacting to the words you were given. You are testing whether those words match the reality. And that is the difference. You stop accepting the label. You start examining the decision.